This is the brand new BMW M2 Competition. Given that it only costs about £3,000 more than a standard M2, and given that the competition packs that they've added to M4 and M5 in the parts haven't really amounted to a great deal, is this really much to get hung up about? Well, yes. For a start, the M2 Competition, well, it looks subtly but crucially just a little bit different. For starters, we've got these lovely traditional M mirrors with the two spars and the slightly broken one just at the top. Then we have the more gaping front, complete with twin spars on the kidney grille, and of course some lovely lightweight alloy wheels, the 788M style, should you be wondering. We've also got some black badges and nice black finishes to the quad exhausts. In here we have an M steering wheel and these lovely M seats. On the steering wheel we've got M1 and M2 buttons. Just for clarification, that doesn't toggle you between an M2 and a 1970s mid-engine supercar. More's a shame, really. But what really makes this car special are the mechanicals. And I'm going to split those into two parts: the engine and the chassis, or rather the handling. Suspension, chassis, handling. You know what I mean. Under the bonnet, gone is the N55 engine, which can be traced all the way back to the M135i, and in is a proper M engine, the S55 from the current generation M4 and M3. Granted, it's been detuned from that spec, but in this spec it's about 10% up in terms of brake horsepower and torque compared to the engine in the regular M2, taking outputs to 404 brake horsepower and 406 pounds-foot of torque. We've also now got two turbochargers instead of just the one. That engine's now more insistent low down and angrier up the top. Is it actually any better? Well, you've got to have real resolve to use all the revs on the road. On paper, in the bar, perhaps on track, you'll appreciate having a proper, in inverted commas, M engine. The rest of the time, well, I think the old N55 was pretty good in its own right, and I think it actually sounded a little bit better. This sounds, well, it sort of sounds impressive the same way that you look up when a jet fighter goes past, but you don't long to hear it again like you do the musical Merlin of a Spitfire. The engine then is good without being great. I certainly didn't dislike it, and it's undeniably effective, but it didn't quite wow me the way I'd hoped. Feeling a touch muted, a bit like it's being held back, as though a freer exhaust and a remap could uncork a whole load more character and fizz. And having driven an M3 CS, I know that fizz is in there. Perhaps someone was afraid that the two could have made things rather uncomfortable for 3 and 4 if it was let completely off the leash in a Cayman not allowed to outperform 911 sort of way. You can of course get this with a manual box. The 7-speed is very good, but needless to say the 6-speed with the extra pedal would be my preferred option for that added layer of interactivity. Saves you money too. Under the bonnet we've got that beautiful carbon brace, and we've also got some bracing across the rear bulkhead. We've also got new settings for the M differential and the ESP, while the spring and damper rates have also changed, and we've got rose jointing in the rear suspension. What's that all add up to? Well, just a more sophisticated feeling car, one that doesn't feel like it's going to bounce you off the road like the original M2 did. Granted, when they did the update to the M2, the last one I drove, that was better, but this is another step on again. As soon as you get into this car, you can just feel the way, even at low speed, it rolls onto that rear suspension so much more smoothly. It sits in the travel much more nicely. And then when you get out to a road like this, over big bumps where previously you felt it wanted to just pogo you off the road, now you can really attack the road. A road like this where the smaller M2 should feel at home compared to the M4, now it really does. You can actually really enjoy it. In Importantly, this is also on passive dampers rather than the adaptive ones, and I think that makes a real difference, because whenever in the car, whatever the situation you're in, you get to know the car and you get to feel exactly how it's going to deal with any sort of situation. So you understand the car intrinsically that much better. Right on the limit with this car, you just feel it's more progressive. Again, it sits into that rear suspension, and with the changes to the M differential, it's more progressive, so you can enjoy that rear wheel drive balance all the more. Ultimately, in the competition, the M2 feels as though it has come of age, and given that it only costs a bit more than the standard M2 that it replaces, it seems like a bargain. The engine might have stolen the headlines when it was announced, but it's actually the suspension and chassis tweaks that are the star of the show once you're behind the wheel. The changes mean that this is now a proper M car, with a more sorted and sophisticated feel. The big arch look is mirrored in the way it drives, with a layer of accessibility and chuckability that is really, really engaging. Now, how about a CSL or GTS version?